And now, from Greater Sandton to the rest of the world, this is the Sandton Times Hour with your host, Alexander.
Welcome wherever you find yourself. This is the Sandton Times Hour, edition 254, week 31 of 2026. I'm your host, Alexander Leibner, and if you're listening for the very first time, why don't you give us a little message, an emoji, a voice note, or a bit of proof of life, and I'd like to welcome you personally to the show. And it's always good to have new listeners joining us, but it's also good to have existing listeners tune in, our regular listeners across South Africa, across the world, be it online or on air. Greetings to you from the vantage point and skylines of Sandton. Certainly the place where things are happening, even though it is a little bit cold at the moment. But I hope wherever you find yourself, you're nice and warm and you are cozying up as you listen for the next hour. And it's great to have you with me. I didn't get a chance to mention this last week, but we had a great Sunday hosting some of you, the Sandton Times listeners, followers, readers, for a screening of the Belgium Grand Prix and the FIFA World Cup final. Talk about a sports-filled Sunday. It was a real marathon run, but those who came along, I think, had a fantastic time. Congratulations to Spain on a well-deserved victory, by the by. But great to see so many fill a cinema and cheer on their teams. And we had an F1 simulator. There were some fun activations, some great food and snacks and drinks. Do keep an eye on the Sandton Times website and social media accounts for future events. I think we're going to be planning a few more of these because it's great to just get everybody out and together and support your favorite sport. Maybe we'll see you there. Some other good news this week. The show was ranked on the Million Podcasts Top 60 African News Podcasts in number 39. And also the top 50 South African news podcasts at number 31. So some great developments there on that front. And thank you to Million Podcasts for sharing that information. Great. Let's take a look at what the next hour holds for us. In a bit, we kick off with a bit of motoring in our Sandton Drive feature as we take a look at the Volvo ES90, more in a bit. Then she started a musical movement that has turned into a remarkable collection of strings in Soweto. Stay tuned for more. As always, I then catch up with our regular entertainment commentator to take a look at a new Netflix movie called The Rip. And finally, the tourism business in South Africa offers huge economic upside, and I'll be chatting to someone about how do we develop this further. So another wonderful hour lined up for you, so do get in touch. It's always good to hear from you, and we'd like to share your feedback, maybe in one of the upcoming shows. So send through your questions, comments, and feedback to editor@sandtontimes.co.za. Connect on social media @Sandton Times. Check out the WhatsApp number 084 Sandton. That's 084 726 3866, and send through your voice notes, text messages, and whatever else is on your mind. And then also the website, sandtontimes.co.za. Don't forget to check that out. If you're not part of the podcast community, be sure to subscribe to the Sandton Times Hour on all major podcast platforms, whichever one you prefer. Apple, Spotify, Podcast Party, YouTube. There's so many to choose from, and you can catch up on previous interviews and conversations right there.
Connect with the Sandton Times. Email editor@sandtontimes.co.za. You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour. Rooted in Sandton, reaching across South Africa. This is the Sandton Times Hour.
I'm flying solo this week as we look at the Volvo ES90 on the Sandton Drive, as not many have had the pleasure of actually test driving this vehicle. Now, it's Volvo's latest electric luxury sedan. It looks very space age if you've seen it on the road, and it's certainly a head turner. So from a design perspective, it really is a striking vehicle and something that you just want to go a little bit closer and have a look at. The driving experience is, in my opinion, quite unique. The key is the size of a matchbox. If you remember those hotel matchboxes that you used to get back in the 80s and 90s. And whilst it's very neat and very slick, it runs the risk of getting lost quite easily if you don't have a system of tracking it. I mean, you put it in your jean pocket, and there's that little smaller pocket in your jeans that you can fit it into. But if you forget it, or you don't know where you've put it, it's so small and so compact that it's difficult to attach something to it. It doesn't have like a little hoop where you can put something through, like a key ring or a lanyard. So if you don't have a system of just keeping track of this key, trust me, I had a situation where I was looking for it for a while. And because it's so small and because it's also a black key, trying to find it is quite a process. So make sure you know where you're going to put it and make sure you keep it in a place that you can always find it again. The car also opens and closes with this key, but there are no buttons and there's no mechanical key and there's also no keyhole. So essentially you simply walk up to the car and it opens and you walk away and it closes in principle. If you don't charge the key regularly, you could find yourself a little stuck, as I did. I parked the car, walked away, came back, and the car didn't want to open. Now, because there's no way of unlocking the car or pressing buttons or doing whatever you normally do with a car, what do you do now? So I eventually then phoned somebody, and they then said to me, look, why don't you try this, why don't you try that, and make sure that you actually charge the key. So, lesson learned. The flip side of the conversation is if you walk away and the car doesn't lock, and there's always that little bit of anxiety in South Africa when you walk away from your car and you always want to make sure, is the car locked, is it not locked? So there's visual indicators to show you that the car is open or closed because the door handles come out like wings and then retract when it closes. But in this instance, it didn't close. So I had to go back to the car, do a little bit of a dance and a little bit of a jig, and then open it, close it, and then walk away, and then it sort of closed and locked. So a little bit of something to get used to. There's also no start button or switch in the car. So you simply put the car into drive, and it goes, and if you click the park button, the ride is over. So that's also something to get used to, because normally you would have a button to press, or if you've got some sort of starter mechanism, in this case, that doesn't exist. So it's a bit of a mental adjustment to get your head around. However, having said all of that, once you've gotten through those unique elements, the ride itself is power-filled, it's smooth, the inside cabin feels luxurious, and it's gorgeous. There's a fabulous big screen. The design of the car is clean. It's got a good layout of buttons, except that majority of the adjustments and daily features are all operated via the center console screen, but it's a touch screen. It works very well, and some people might like that. Others might not enjoy that too much. You might want to have more tangible buttons. I think the only tangible buttons on the center console is like a crystal volume knob, and you can skip the songs, which you also can do on the steering wheel. There's a panoramic sunroof, which is well placed and brings in some light into the cabin. And the boot itself also very generous. You've got power adjustable front seats. There's a two-way lumbar support, which comes standard. Both front seats are heated for added comfort, especially now in the winter months. Let me tell you, those are coming in really handy. And there's a rear parking camera, rain sensors, head-up display, all the comforts you could ask for in a high-end electric vehicle. So the claimed range on this electric vehicle is about 755 kilometers. You might experience it differently depending on how you drive. And the acceleration from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour is in 6.6 seconds. So some really good power in this vehicle. It starts off at 1.5, almost 1.6 million rand, and comes with a panoramic sunroof, 4-zone climate control, standard 20-inch alloy wheels. You then move up to the Plus Edition, which is priced at just over 1.6 million rand. This is where the heads-up display comes in and a Bose premium sound system. The Ultra, which is the top of the range, is just under 1.8 million and includes the soft closed doors, electrochromatic panoramic sunroof, a Bowers & Wilkins premium audio system, and a massage feature in the front seats. The Volvo ES90 is a premium experience. It's unique, it's different, and it's probably something you would expect from a brand with Swedish heritage. If that sounded enticing, well, go check it out. We're going to put some more details up on the website, but probably the best thing to do is actually give it a test drive and see for yourself how you like the ride. That's it for Sandton Drive this week.
This is the Sandton Times Hour.
More than 3 decades ago, a chance BBC radio report about a struggling group of young string players in Deep Kloof, Soweto, inspired British viola player Rosemary Nalden to take extraordinary action. And what began in 1992 as an ambitious fundraising effort with 120 professional musicians busking simultaneously at 16 British railway stations has since grown into one of South Africa's most remarkable music education success story. Today, Rosemary Nalden, MBE, is the founder of Buskaid and director of Buskaid Academy of String Teaching and Performance, and she leads Buskaid from its purpose-built music school in Deep Kloof, where more than 100 young musicians receive world-class string tuition, many becoming performers, teachers, and role models within their own communities. From humble beginnings in a tiny church office to producing an internationally acclaimed string ensemble that became the first South African orchestra to perform at the BBC Proms, Buskaid has transformed countless lives through the power of music, discipline, and opportunity. And it's an absolute pleasure to welcome Rosemary Nalden to the Sandton Times Hour. Rosemary, good to have you on.
Wonderful to be on. Thank you, Alexander, for this opportunity.
Rosemary, one of the questions since I've seen the ensemble perform at the 67 Blankets event in Hyde Park Corner was this fascination with the string instrument. Why is this the instrument that seems to be the one that they gravitate towards? Why not saxophones or drum kits or organs or harps? Why is it violins and cellos?
It's a fantastic question. And I think historically it dates back to around about, I think, the late 1940s, early 50s, when Yehudi Menuhin came out here and was told that he wasn't allowed to play to people of color, to black people. And he said, well, in that case, I'm not going to come out. So there was a young black violinist who went to that concert and was fascinated. I hope I've got my facts right. Out of that sprang a whole culture of learning the violin in Soweto. And in fact, from a heritage point of view, I'm part of that sort of family tree because the Soweto String Quartet were taught by the man who was at that concert and started having violin lessons. And the original teacher whose voice I heard on BBC Radio 4 in late 1991 was also part of that sort of group of violinists. You know, when I went into Soweto, I had no idea about all this. Tracing it back, I think that's how it started. And interestingly, there are still children who come and say, I want to learn the violin. I mean, at the beginning, that was all they said, the violin. What about the cello? Didn't really know what the cello was. Double bass, mystery. But the violin was what they wanted. Now, of course, because we've expanded and we teach all these 4 instruments, violin, viola, cello, and double bass, they have mates who play the double bass. They want to come and learn the double bass. So it's changed from that point of view. So when they came and said, I want to learn the violin, I had to sort of try and lure them into the wonderful world of the cello, for example, and the double bass. So that's how it sort of developed.
Well, it's remarkable that you mentioned that because the Soweto String Quartet is immediately where my mind went when I heard them perform. And I remember the 4 in their very African tuxedos, this beautiful BMW with the zebra stripes on it. I think that was one of the album covers. And I thought, gosh, this really brings back memories from the mid-90s when you hear these young performers now string up a violin, a cello, a double bass, and it gives you that sort of same nostalgic sound.
Yes. Well, we have taught. In fact, that BMW has arrived at our music school.
Oh, really?
With a child, with a Soweto String Quartet child. We've taught several of their relatives, sons, nephews in Diepkloof.
Rosemary, so how does it work? Do students just come to the school? Do they pay an enrollment fee? Is it sponsored? Do you take, is it like a talent show where you have to see if they've got sort of an aptitude towards this? Or is it anyone who has an aspiration to play this instrument and you make a plan to bring them into the fold?
Well, going right back to the beginning, it was children only who turned up. They would see somebody walking with a violin or indeed a cello, and they would follow them. We started in the office of a church called Modisio Botse in Diepkloof, round the corner from the original old Diepkloof Hall, which is where I first came. That project fell by the wayside, which is why I went back to South Africa. I was asked by the students, somehow, I don't know how, because in those days, my main contact was via a fax machine, and they faxed me in London and said, please come back. that's why I started the new project in 1997. That was from a little old priest's office in a church with sort of rats running in and out because the church used it for when they had occasions and they made food in this building. It leaked. It was unbelievable. And that's when I said, we have to find, because I came out here for a year and then I realized that, that was going to be longer than a year, maybe a couple. So that's when we looked around and found a piece of land and built the music school. When we built that music school, which was in 1999, children were still coming in by themselves. From that time onwards, which was 1999, things started to change. I mean, the whole sort of social landscape has changed, as we know. And more recently, children have been brought by so-called middle-class parents who feel that the violin is something they'd like their kids to do. And my question is always, I turn to the child and I say, do you want to learn the violin? And if the parent says, well, I haven't really discussed this, I say, it's not going to work. The passion has to come from the child, which is how it's been right from the beginning. So now we have a sort of mixture of children from backgrounds which are still disadvantaged, where the parents have not had opportunities, where the parents are in service employment or unemployed, and a few children from a more stable, what I would call middle class background. And I think this is a very good mix, because what happens in Soweto is that children from the vast majority of families go to local schools. Children whose parents can afford it send their children up to school in Johannesburg. Now, if you think about the journey and, the delivery of children back from Johannesburg to Soweto, those children barely ever meet because when can they meet? This is why I feel that it's really important to have this social mix, which we do have in the music school. And you ask about fees. The idea is that parents who can afford to pay more will subsidize those children some of whom we have a granny or two or many coming to us and saying, I cannot afford these fees and we will peg it at 10 rands a month. But I mean, our fees are ridiculously low. And it's difficult because this is such an important influence in these children's lives. We know about music education. We know the effect it has on general education. But there is another problem, and that is that schools in Soweto are increasing their hours to after school and weekend classes, which has really eroded the time that these children can come to Buskaid. And I spend my life trying to sort of point out to parents how important it is to learn a musical instrument, how it affects their mathematics, all their learning actually. But unfortunately, we can't fight that system because many of these schools are now including the curriculum on weekends. So the children have to go to school. So that's a sort of added challenge for us. Any parent who comes to us and says, I cannot afford this, we will make it a sort of peppercorn amount of 10 rands. How does that work? Because if you add it up, it's not very much money. And our budget is about 4.5 million a year. So we are highly dependent on trusts, on corporates, and on individuals to keep Buskaid running. And since COVID, that has been an increasing problem. I mean, before COVID, we had a property company, which was our main sponsor, and it was a six-figure sum. It was over 1 million rands. After COVID, they obviously were not able to include Buskaid as one of their beneficiaries. So we've struggled quite a lot since COVID. Of late, it's been really difficult. We do have a sister charity in the UK, and we have another sister in the USA. The one in the USA, from time to time, helps us. In the UK, that charity assists us. But raising money in South Africa has become more and more of a challenge, I'm sad to say.
Apart from these corporate engagements that you have, or engagements that are planned, are there public performances that you offer where people buy tickets and they can support Buskaid through these sort of public performances?
We had our public concert. It was in the Linda Auditorium. It was about 2/3 full, which was wonderful. But that, by the time we've paid for the hall, this is another aspect of what we do. We job create. So the older members of the ensemble, who are of professional standard, are paid as professionals. So we have fees, we have the hire of the hall, and the biggest bit of all now is advertising. So the money that we bring in does not cover the cost of the concert, but we still think it's we need to go out there and showcase what we do, which is what we did on Sunday. And we had a magnificent audience. They were on their feet, they were screaming and shouting, because the end of that concert included some Amapiano. And Amapiano is a mystery to me. But clearly, what I couldn't believe, the whole audience was up on its feet, and even the people of my sort of generation and younger were sitting there and enjoying the vibe. So, yeah. The other thing we're about to do is we're about to go on tour. We're going to the UK on tour. Now, that is costing a fortune, but a lot of that money has been raised in the UK because we are collaborating with a UK group. And if we manage to raise money and sponsorship from that will come back and go into the trust.
So there you have it. Rosemary Nalden, MBE. She's the founder of Buskaid and the director of Buskaid Academy of Strings Teaching and Performance in Diepkloof in Soweto. An incredible initiative to get young people and also slightly older people to perform the string instruments as they should be. And if you ever get a chance to see Buskaid live, well, I really encourage you to go and support them and go and watch them. And more details will be up on the Sandton Times website if you want to find out a little bit more. And Rosemary, thank you so much for making the time to chat to me on the Sandton Times Hour.
Thank you so much, Alexander. That was a great pleasure. And wow, I hope our Sandton Times audience now comes flocking to our concerts.
Keep listening. There's more to come on the Sandton Times Hour. Follow the Sandton Times on social media at Sandton Times. And we're back. The Sandton Times Hour continues.
As we head into the second half of the Sandton Times Hour, my name is Alexander Leipner. A quick reminder that if you caught anything on the show that you found interesting, but you didn't get the details, you didn't have a chance to write it down, no worries. You can hop onto the website sandtontimes.co.za, where we endeavor to upload the show notes, which gives you a bit of a summary of all that we've discussed this week, with some additional reading, some additional links, websites, ticket prices, phone numbers, email addresses, whatever it is that you're looking for. It can be found on the Sandton Times Hours show notes. Then we've also got our social media accounts, so if you're not following those yet, make sure you do so at Sandton Times, or use the WhatsApp number 084 Sandton. That's 084 726 3866. And you can send through your voice notes, text messages, and so much more. And that's the exclusive Sandton Times WhatsApp number. So, last week, we had Tat Wolfen on, and I'm happy to report that he's back with more entertainment commentary after a very saucy and spicy review of the Odyssey, Tat.
Alex, that was not the half of it. I left so much out. And as I said to you last week, I could have ranted for a good hour. And in fact, after we did our show last week, I kept on thinking, you know what, I didn't mention this negative aspect. So, yes, that was very unfortunate.
So from the rant to the rip this week.
Yeah, The Rip, a new movie on Netflix starring these lifelong buddies, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. Now, for this, we need to do a quick rewind in movie history.
Okay.
And they co-wrote a movie which was released in 1997 called Good Will Hunting. They must have known the renowned director Gus Van Sant, because he directed this writing debut of theirs. And to this day, there are people who rant about the movie. I think that it was largely overrated. Probably the best thing about the movie was Robin Williams.
He was great.
He blesses every movie he touches. But I always thought the movie was overrated, and I always thought, and I have thought to this day, that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck are overrated.
All right.
I find them to be very bland characters and delivering very one-dimensional performances. But to be fair, this new movie of theirs, The Rip, on Netflix, was actually immensely entertaining. If you don't mind the swearing, which is Scorsese level swearing, but it's a cop movie, so I guess it's the kind of thing we have to expect in cop movies these days.
But based upon a true story.
Apparently, it's what the French would call flic contre flic.
Oh, c'est bon.
Cop against cop. So it's about a highly specialized cop group that looks at criminals, big drug heists, big money heists. And as we know, whenever there's big money involved, you can expect corruption, whether it's amongst cops, politicians, whatever. And this is the essence, the core of the story, is that these cops are called out to investigate dirty money that's in this house.
Schmutzig.
And I don't want to go much further than that, other than to say, when the money is very big, then we start asking, like, does the money get handed over? Does only part of it get handed over? And when there's a fairly big group of cops involved, who gets money, who doesn't, who gets frozen out? How do you do this thing? It's a question of these guys checking each other out sideways throughout.
Yeah, because the reality is that nobody at the time knows how much money is on hand. The cops or the police are the ones who are supposed to be counting the money, and the cartel is certainly not going to rat them out and say, well, this guy took $1 million or $2 million and walked away. So it's this sort of moral dilemma of the good guys, in inverted commas, being faced with a whole bunch of money in cash that no one has a record of, essentially.
And when you're talking about the equivalent of about $500 million rand, and when you're talking that many rands, then even that is a large sum of money. It was something like 26 point something million dollars. Okay, so that's enough to make a saint go crooked.
Yeah.
And further to that, you may remember me moaning last week about this current trend amongst filmmakers to bleed the color out of movies. And what really thrilled me about this movie was the use of color. It was really fantastic. It was obviously very well thought out and planned and very dramatically used. And for me, it just brought this movie alive. And then, of course, what also brings it alive is that there's a whole bunch of action once it gets going. So I think it has something to please everyone. It's on a level, it's kind of an art house flick. And here am I doing the inverted commas thing, hoping that listeners can hear the inverted commas. So it's an art house flick. It's an action flick for the action/cop fans. I think it has something in it to please everybody. And, it's a Matt Damon, Ben Affleck movie that I rather enjoyed, which also says something for it.
Well, there you have it. The Rip on Netflix, I watched it as well. And I also found it quite enthralling. I think partly because it was based upon a true story. And when you start looking at it, and maybe in the South African context, we watch it and go, the story sounds somewhat familiar. Maybe it's art mimicking reality or reality mimicking art. I'm not quite sure. But Tat, we're going to talk about art or reality mimicking each other again next week.
We certainly shall, and I look forward to it. Cheers, Alex.
WhatsApp your voice notes to the Sandton Times Hour. on 084 Sandton. That's 084-726-3866.
So tourism has long been viewed as a powerful driver of visitor numbers, and something I've been banging on about on this show for years. But what if the greatest value lies in its ability to stimulate investment, create jobs, and transform entire economies? And as we've said multiple times on the show in the past, tourism is one of those under-serviced sectors that needs more attention in South Africa, because it does have this huge potential to take anybody and bring them into the economy. And South Africa is just so rich in destinations, in culture, in these attractions that international tourists would find interesting, that I think it's just such an interesting stepping stone that needs to be explored and pursued much more vigorously. Well, I think it's pretty obvious that South Africa needs to strengthen its global competitiveness as well, and the conversation needs to shift from simply promoting the destination to strategically developing it. So joining me is Business Executive and Destination Strategist Brian Mpono. He believes the country's future success depends on creating integrated world-class destinations where tourism, investment, technology, and infrastructure work hand in hand to build places people choose not only to visit, but also to invest in, live in, and do business in. And Brian, it's good to have you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Thank you, Alex.
You've said that destinations are built, not advertised. What is the biggest misconception governments still have about tourism-led economic growth?
I won't say there's misconception, but rather it's more of a shout-out, clarion call to corporates, I'd say like myself, because in my business day, I'm the CEO of one of the most iconic destinations in the Southern Hemisphere, Oceans Umhlanga. So it's a clarion call more so, Alex, to private sector more than government, because government creates environments for private sector to invest and put shoulders to the grind and yes, invest. But because government will only provide infrastructure and in the form of policy framework and the ability to invest. So the onus is not very much on the government side, but more on the private sector. What I will say in terms of misconception, I believe government can step up and do more, because we are entering an era where you have to maximize every resource that you got. And, tourism is probably one of the biggest game changers in terms of economic growth, job creation, and just positioning, be it the country, province, city, town. So I wouldn't use the word misconception more. It's more of an alignment, and it must be driven, I believe, from private sector, because, like I said, government creates an enabling environment. Private sector needs to be the driving force, which is why I'm so vocal about, in inverted commas, destination marketing, and moving away from marketing and driving towards building. Because you can only market so much. And what happens when you've run out of things to market? I won't say you run out, but it's within the journey of building that innovation is born. And when innovation is born, you're constantly changing the game for the industry.
Where does that government effort need to lie? Because, there's a lot of things that need to be ticked off. Is it building more airports? Is it more safety, digital connectivity, public spaces? Where does government need to do its bit for private sector to then take the baton and run with it?
It's more policy. It's very easy to make a noise about an issue that is harping or hindering the growth, the performance of a particular area. So let's take, for example, rural tourism or urban tourism. But if you don't zoom in on the policy framework around that area, then you'll have an issue, because you'll be constantly hitting a brick wall when you're wanting to innovate, when you're wanting to grow at a mammoth level. Take Oceans Umhlanga as an example. It's one of the most prominent mixed-use developments in the Southern Hemisphere. It has become Durban as well as KZN's investment memorandum that you can have hotel, residential, shopping, all in one precinct, because of course it also touches on the element of safety in the precinct. So I can roam around Lagoon Drive, Chartwell, Lighthouse without even getting into my car. But the ability of developers to be able to build iconic destinations like Oceans Mhlanga lies also a lot on the ability of, number one, the tourism department, to economic development of either the municipality or district municipality or metro municipality as well as at a provincial level, tourism again, and also economic development. So they need to see the vision of the developers of Oceans Umhlanga. If not, then you'll have a challenge. So how do you solve the challenge? You ensure that the policy frameworks at a municipal level, which are communicated in the IDP, and then obviously at a provincial level will be at the PGDS, which is the Provincial Growth and Development Strategy, to ensure as private sector that there's an enabling environment for me as a developer of Oceans Umhlanga to be able to build Oceans Umhlanga and create jobs. Mind you, just to detour, that development alone over the past, since it began construction and development, has provided over 20,000 jobs and continues to do so. So that's where the focus should be. The focus should be to ensure that there's alignment on policy and for government, municipal and provincial, to allow private sector to have a voice, because it is us who do business on the ground, not government. To allow us to have a voice where there's policy that needs to be, I don't want to use the proverbial cut the red tape scenario, but where there are policies that need to be relaxed so that I can put more money into the province, into the city. That's where the focus should be.
All right, well, there you have it. A focus on policy as an enabler for tourism. And once again, we know the knock-on effects and the benefits that come from having visitors coming to South Africa, but it's very difficult to have a holistic tourism industry when it just consists of places of like Cape Town, the Kruger Park, and then the rest of the country is sort of sitting idly on the side. Business Executive and Destination Strategist Brian Mpono, thank you for being on the Sandton Times Hour and for making the time to chat.
Alex, it was amazing, lovely. I love the energy, and talk to you soon.
Well, that's it for another week on the Sandton Times Hour. Time to wrap things up, and feel free to send through your questions, comments, and feedback to editor@sandtontimes.co.za. You can connect on social media at Sandton Times or visit the website sandtontimes.co.za. Don't forget to connect on the WhatsApp line 084 Sandton. That's 084 726 3866. And feel free to send through your voice notes, text messages, and more. As always, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and join the growing digital community online. And very special thank you to my guests who made time to be on the show this week, as well as the team behind the scenes pulling it all together and making sure it all happens as it should. A special thank you to you for listening, and God willing, we'll do it all again next week.
Winner of the 2025 Telkom Radio Awards, Best Talk Show.
This is the Sandton Times Hour.